Hello and welcome to Clowning Around again with me, Stroud. And hello, lovely listeners and viewers wherever you are in the world. And I hope that you have found some time to laugh and to think and to play because you know it does make you feel better. And yes, lovely, lovely, lovely listeners of Clowning Around. You know, I said I'm going to only interview and chat to fascinating, interesting people that have different ways of thinking and different ways of being. Well, let me tell you, this lady is going to absolutely do all of that. And so without further ado, because you're already looking at her if you're watching this on YouTube, let me introduce this week's theme on Clowning Around again. We are going to be clowning around. We're going to be clowning around language in business. Oh, yes, with the very, 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 very smart and intelligent Laura Fleming Schulte. Hello, Laura.
Hello, Em. How are you? I'm excited. I feel like I should be singing. Where the hills are alive, something like that should be happening. So
I know, right?
I look forward to it.
I know. Well, thank you so much for coming. And, you know, it's a really funny thing because I was saying this in a previous episode. When I started with Clowning Around, it was just auditory. So there was no visual. And so now everybody gets to see me jumping around singing, whereas before it would just be there. So now I'm like, oh, I'm doing it and everyone can watch me. But it wouldn't feel like the pod if I didn't do it. So, you know, and I think it warms everybody up. Now, my lovely listeners, they're very smart and they're very intelligent.
Of course.
They do like to know where in the world my guests are. So where are you today?
I am in Munich, Germany. I am not German. I have a German last name, but I'm actually American and I've lived here for 20 years. And today I'm sitting in a beautiful spot here in Munich.
I love it. I love it. And, you know, and it's so lovely to have people that land in different places. And I love the fact you've been in Germany for 20 years. Still definitely have your American twang though, don't you?
No, I think you're the one with the accent, aren't you?
Yes, quite possibly. I see how this is. See, we're already playing with language. See what we're doing here, kids? This is the whole beautiful language thing. And how are you? I'm assuming you're pretty fluent in German if you've been there for 20 years.
I'm fairly fluent in German, but I just found out that I have been calling a baguette something very different for the last 20 years. And I do not, I don't know what it is. It's a Parisienne. That's actually correct. It's a baguette that's wider. That's a wider one. And I get this at the local bakery. And I have been asking, I have a 50-50 chance. Sometimes I say Parisienne, sometimes I say Pariser. And I don't know if anyone is listening to this and has a full command of the German language beyond mine, but apparently that means something different. And I'll let everyone just look that up. It's a bit of slang for protective device, and I had no idea. And apparently no one behind the counter thought it funny enough to tell me. I'm thinking like, I would be waiting for this woman to come in every week. Is she going to say it again? Is she going to say it again? And my kids told me, I thought, are you serious? And there's an expression a friend of mine gave me in German. It's ungewollt komisch, and that's unwillingly funny. I think that's German humor, and you're making fun of me.
I love that so much. And it is very funny because the Germans do have a specific sense of humor and a specific way. And I love that phrase so much, sort of unwittingly funny, because it does quite sum up, you know, my perception of how Germany laughs and what they love. Oh, I love it. You see, we're already on language. It's like you're a pro. It's like you know what you're doing.
I live it every day, right? Every day, right? When you live in a country that has a different language than the one that you intrinsically think and feel in, you're always listening to these kinds of things. And at least I am. I'm always noticing them. But I can remember even as a kid, before I understood what was going on, for example, in conversations where the language was beyond me, I remember thinking, what was the first word? And the first word must have been means, right? Because you need to say that to say, this word means this. So the word you have to know is means. I mean, that's not normal for a kid to be thinking about that.
No. But, you know, that kid has then grown to become this very successful woman who can now think about all of this and do all this cool stuff in business. And it is, but, you know, as a storyteller and as a comic, you know, the craft of language and how we utilize it and how we frame it and how do we connect by telling stories is, in essence, all of the many years worth of training. Because if you're going to put a show together, you have to have the different undulations and different feels of different times and rhythms. Because even with a comedy show, which is what I make, you can't have it all just being at one pace and funny all the way through, because for an hour, that would become unrelenting and too much for everybody. So the language and how you take people, yes, there's the tone and there's the body language and there's all the staging side, but the narrative of what the words are can really matter. Oh, gosh, you see, we're already going off on tangents now. All my regular listeners will know, and I know you now know as well, is that I have a series of questions that I like to ask everybody. Now, I know you're a very proficient, successful business soul, so we can just imagine you there at a big conference, sitting on a panel, waiting for the interviewer to walk on over. Here I am. There's a lot of an audience. They're all very excited. It's a mixture of German and Brits, but we're going to do it in English because that's what the host can really speak. They're all just clapping. There's smoke coming because it's a big event. I don't know why there's smoke. There's some fireworks that have gone off. Poof, 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 poof. And behind us is a big screen and it says, language, business choices. And people are like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. And so the host sits down, hello, and says hello. And we do that. The audience is ready. They've got their cups of tea, their glasses of wine. They're like, this is going to be brilliant. Question number 1 comes, and it's like, what does language and business really mean to you?
Language and business, the way we connect with each other in business is very much across language. When we see working remotely, we have a lot of things, of course, that are we can try to demonstrate physically. We can do other aspects that work, but when it comes down to it, we really buy from each other across what we say. And we also see, when we think about if any of your listeners have had any kind of sales training or have been in sales situations, I remember the first time I ever had to sell something. I thought I was an art consultant in a gallery. I'd just finished my degree in art history and was very excited to be a consultant. And it was made quite clear I was selling. And I'd never sold anything. Everyone in my family kind of had a calling. And then they'd had my grandfather was an actor, my father was a doctor, my mother was a teacher. Like nobody really said, I do this and want this much money for it. And this is why it's great. It's great for you. So this selling aspect was a shock, but it also made me very aware of how we use words and how certain phrases can connect or certain phrases can distance the people that we're trying to do business with. And we bring that into a cultural situation, different cultures, could be different cultures in one country as well, that can really change. I saw it very clearly working here in Germany because I had to speak. Actually, what I hear is that my American accent sounds accented yet now in the United States. And I've had to change my language to make sure that my audience could understand my American English. And I've noticed which expressions don't work in different settings because the context isn't there. So the words we choose make a lot of difference, and it makes it, and I think there's a lot of space for mistakes and misunderstandings. And the more, maybe not sensitive, but the more aware we can be of the audience we're speaking to, the better choices we can make about our own words. As a comedian, you get to test things, don't you? You get to see, that worked, that didn't work. Oh, this phrase worked, but this phrase didn't. This timing worked, but this timing didn't. I watched Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, God could have shown up and I wouldn't have been more impressed than seeing Jerry Seinfeld walk down the stairs at this comedy club in New York. It's like, oh my God, I think I know that guy. I know who he is. Like, he's shaped so much of my culture. And so watching him perform, I was surprised and happy to see that some of his material just wasn't funny. It didn't work. And the next night, he actually was on the first, I don't know what it was, the first episode of the new Tonight Show, I think. And he did a portion of what he'd presented to us. And the rest he left out because he tested it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's so much in what you've just said. The ability of testing language is super important. And, I've coached hundreds of business people in terms of how to deliver talks that land. And quite often the choice of language, you don't know how things are going to land until you actually say them out loud for yourself, but then B for an audience. And so many people in business go, oh, well, I'll just get up and I'll just do it. And I'm like, no. And it's not only the delivery, it is also the choice of language. And having, been very lucky of traveling around the world and working across all sectors in business, it's interesting to me that for us, you and I are talking about language in business because the words that we use are key, right? In terms of building relationships, everything else like that. Not those crazy anachronisms that certain businesses have, that then when you come in as an outsider, you sit there and you go, I have no idea what you've just spoken about, because that then can then actually, as you say, go against building rapport and everything else like that. And when you're an outsider and you're sitting in and everyone else is going, oh, that's the 462 ones. Yeah. And that's the lay-by of the mama. And you're like, what are you all talking about? And they're like, oh. And that, for me, is where we've got to be, really mindful about how we're using our language, especially in business. Gosh, you're very good. You've sparked me. So many things. Question number 2, what song would be language in business?
I was thinking about songs and thinking more about the song for this aspect of business I'm focusing on right now. And the word that's really driving me crazy is I'm looking for the right word for this phase in sales that we call nurture.
Right.
And because I don't like the word nurture. It doesn't sound active enough. And I don't know if that's just my prejudice, but I've been polling some different groups of people. What do you feel about this? And no one really has a great term for it. But so I was thinking for this nurture, how do we have this ability in business? That was more in the space, the Madonna space, right? So in the groove, you're in the pipeline, you're in the flow. And I think some of these words are really, really good words and playful. She's talking about, you want me, you got to dance. You got to dance, right? So, and I think it's a fun one too for thinking about qualifying who we choose to work with as customers. This is this chemistry that often gets triggered right away by words. Maybe we're not noticing it, but I know we think of chemistry as with body, but when I think about when I meet people who are prospective clients or partners, sometimes just the way the conversation flows, I realize, I don't think this is going to get better.
I'm so there with you, and I love that. And I will add Madonna Get Into the Groove onto the Spotify playlist, because it's just like, get into the groove, all you gotta move, your love tell me. And if you think about business, right, especially in this AI world, that getting into the groove and having energy, and then that mindfulness around the language that you're using feels so pertinent. I mean, I think you've smashed it out the park. There we go.
Oh, fantastic. Plus we all get to have that one in mind.
I love that. And also, I don't even know if I've got a Madonna on that playlist, so I now do. So I feel like you have wronged a right. So thank you, Laura. Question number 3, the whole audience, they're clapping a lot. They're loving you. There's still smoke billowing behind us. They're like, soon the smoke will go, but we love them. We love them. If language and business was a country, what country would it be?
I was just in Switzerland on the weekend. And I have my mother visiting from the US. She's 86. Okay. Distances need to be shorter. So I took a train trip from Munich to cross the Alps by train on the Bernina Overland Express. Maybe some of you have heard of it, but it goes through these mountain passes. It's almost across a glacier. And when doing this trip, it's shocking to me that Switzerland is such an amazing collection of languages, of cultures, of talking about value systems and perspectives, and yet they find this unity and balance in a kind of a mutual respect for the weirdnesses everyone else has, right? I'm not Swiss, so I hope I'm not. Well, actually, genetically, that's what I came back as being, even though no one genetically in my American family history seems to know that anyone ever came from Switzerland. But when I look at this country and see how they connect just by train and tunnels, you need to get from that side of Switzerland to that side of Switzerland. Sure, let's just build the Gotthard Tunnel through, and then this place that really should be Italy. Like it feels like it. We were in Torino. It feels like Italy, but it's Switzerland, and Torino is actually Italy. Is it true? Yeah, Torino is Italy, and it's just across the border. And all of the rest of this in Bellinzona, for example, I thought, is this in Switzerland. These connections were amazing. So they've built this infrastructure to keep the connections there. And if I remember correctly, the history of this tunnel building and this railroad, it's like circles like this around in the mountain out the top. I mean, it was just, I thought Google was going insane when I zoomed in on the route, and I thought that's actually the train. So I had to go. And I think this infrastructure to connect people and somehow find a way to manage it, even though they have it's 4 official languages. And so many of
Yeah.
the people that I've worked with from Switzerland actually speak English as well, really well.
Yeah.
That's
I
amazing.
think that's a absolutely, I think especially because of how Switzerland, the role that it plays in the world of business and stuff. And I think, that everybody that I've ever worked with in who is based in Switzerland, just that, that language and the connection that they utilize. I think that, absolute perfect answer. Would give you a gold star. In fact, have sent you a gold star for that one through the ether.
Got it.
There you go. She's got it. It's great. And who makes you think of language in business? Who is the wordsmith for you that you're like, yes, that's where I would go?
There are I don't think it's any one person. I
Okay.
I have found I'm going to admit it. I have an Instagram issue. I can't actually be on it. I have to delete it from my phone because I will watch these kinds of funny bits over and over and over. But I think the people on Instagram, these creators who are really playing with language and showing the sheer challenge behind trying this. There's one woman who tries to speak German, and I think she's Chinese, but it's a recording telling her whether or not what she said is recognizable as German. And she tries and tries and tries. And it's just like I've been there, and I can see it's even harder for her because it's
Yeah.
not the sound she's used to making.
Yeah.
And so many of these people on Instagram that play around with this is what we say here, and this is what we say here, these are the words and so on. I think it's pure genius, and it's really a deep understanding of these differences that can be shown through language. I think you see it. I think I saw it actually in the kind of writing that came out of Ireland for people that grew up with Irish and then shifted to English, and seeing the kind of playfulness you can have with a language if you aren't stuck in the rules of that language.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe I'm the only one laughing when I make my jokes in German, but at least
No,
I'm laughing.
but you're right, because also there's a thing of, I think when it does come down to sort of the language in business, it it's always going to be shifting and moving, right?
Yeah.
And it's just that thing, and depending on where you're from, and depending on your background, and depending on so many different factors. But it's that specificity, which is ironic because I can't really say that word, of that challenge of being really conscious about how it is that you are communicating your language in the business that you do. And I
Yeah.
think it's one of those things, which is why I'm so pleased that we decided to talk about that, because it's actually that thing of how do we make sure that we take a beat and don't make the assumptions, which I think in the business world, there can be lots of assumptions that people know things. And actually, it's
Mm.
just going, no, let's just craft the language. Let's just think about it a little bit more, right?
Yeah, I had a rule for my team there at the startup that was growing so fast.
Mm.
When we had discussions, I told my team that pronouns were off limits, that they had to use actual nouns instead of it, they, them. These are the kinds of things that come into discussions of processes. And when you talk about, well, they told them that they can't do it. And you have to have someone in the group who is courageous and irritating enough to say, I didn't understand what that is. So,
Mm.
and most people won't do it because we've been trained generally not to interrupt people, that that's rude. And we don't necessarily want to stick out as the one who is the only one who doesn't understand what's going on. When actually, when someone is courageous enough to say, I didn't understand that, then everyone else is like, "Oh, thank goodness you asked that. I had no idea what they were talking about."
And I mean, that's so empowering. And I've been coaching people for 20 plus years. That sort of, and for me, one of the things that I always find fascinating is when somebody shifts from going I, because they're talking about themselves, and then they start using the you word. because they're
Ah,
disassociated with what it is that they're saying, because they know that as soon as I say I don't connect with joy that much, for example, and they sort of go, well, you just don't connect with joy that much, do you? And there's that moment when that for me, that choice of language gives me
interesting.
such an indicator in terms of where they're at and then where the challenge is. And again,
Hmm.
this is that thing of not only how do we craft the language, but also how do we listen to the language as well, right?
Hmm.
And I love the
Hmm.
fact that you empowered everybody to sort of go, yeah, I don't get that. And I'm quite often, I float around the world being the chief happiness officer, and I'll be sitting in very big grown up meetings with people talking about awfully clever things. And I'll be like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you've just said. And because I can say that, and most people go, no, neither did I. You completely lost me on
Yeah.
slide 2, and we're on slide 42, So, yeah, I'm loving it. The audience are having a sip. They're having a little bit of popcorn. They're going, gosh, this is great. I'd never really thought about language and business like this, but I'm loving it. Yum, 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 yum. If language and business was an object, what object would it be?
This is an object.
Mm.
Imagine business. There, I have my head so connected to this word I was missing, this word about nurture. So
Mhm.
as I was thinking about it, that's where I got into some of these other thoughts about language in general and business. I don't know, language and business. I don't know it though. I actually don't have an answer for that. I don't have a word.
That's okay, and we can own it.
Do you
And
have one?
I actually do, because
Oh,
for
do you?
me, yeah, if there was, I think I've got them here. Please wait, caller, while I'm just looking down in my magic place. Here we go. So quite often there can be these moments where people go, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to think about it from a different. These are awesome. So they're called story cubes, right? And
Oh,
quite often when
wow.
people are stuck in whatever way, I take them to my retreat and bring them to various different places. And what they have is they've got all of these little different words on. So they can be just a prompt, an idea, a creation. You can put them together. And then
Mhm.
for me, the reason that these work and would be the object of language in business is that they enable people to, in the nicest possible way, get out of their own heads to trust that they do have the right words when they're sparked in the right thing. So that would be my object for
Oh,
language and
I like
business.
that. I like
Yeah,
that.
they're very cool. They're very
Wow.
cool. Yeah. So there you go. There's a little prop that I didn't know I was going to use. See, it's magic. It's always just there. How? Da-da! I love that. How do you play?
How do I play? Part of it is words. I think
Mm,
I play an awful lot with words and how they're connected and which language they probably came from. I think that's it's always fun to look into what's the background of that word. Or I realize
mm.
we my I raised my two daughters here, and we've all had constant fun with German words from an English speaker's perspective. I mean, we have the word for exit in German is Ausfahrt. I mean, that's funny. That's
There just
funny.
doesn't need there just doesn't need to be anything else, and that's the thing, right? And
No.
and when I think about the 12 different ways that people play that I've identified, one of them is storyteller, and the storyteller
Yes.
is all how do you use the language. So I like it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how do you look after you?
That I think there, as I think about what makes me feel healthier, it's being outside, it's walking, moving.
Hmm.
I think that's a big part of how I take care of myself. It's one of the things that really attracted me to Munich specifically and to Europe in general, in contrast to where I grew up. There are only so many places in the United States where you can exist for very long without a car. And I actually don't like being in cars very much, and never have. So I don't know
Mm,
what happened to me, but that was not my place of joy. And I noticed here in Munich, I can be outside so much all the time,
mm,
year round, even though yes, it's cold, but it's pleasantly cold.
mm.
And I have mountains close by. I think even just sitting on my balcony is something that's good for me. So I think that's it. I think it's the outdoors, the mobility, the a little bit seeing this expanse around you. And I'm lucky to be in a very beautiful place.
I love that. What or who makes you laugh? I mean, I think we've got one idea of a comedian that makes you laugh because you saw him
Oh
in
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
US.
But I
Yeah.
mean, I think right now it's Laura Ramoso. I don't
Okay.
know if
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
run
Yeah.
across her. But and I think she's so funny. I mean, I think also the weird Barbie Kate McKinnon is hysterical. But Laura Ramosa right now, she's so funny because my kids send me, "Mom, did you see this one?" Right, and it's things about her own mother. And Laura's comedy is she does impersonations of her Italian father and her German mother. And she herself lives in Canada, so she has other family members that come into this. But my kids notice how similar I am to the impersonations she does of her German mother. And I mean, there's a lot you can read into that. So, and
Yes.
the thing I really, really enjoy about her comedy is that she involves her parents, which gives it a whole other layer
Mhm.
of allowing them to have fun with the way she's making fun of them. So she gives them also a position of respect, also to play with the characters that she's created based on them. I really like what she does.
I love it. I love it. And I'll make sure that we put a little clip in the notes so that everybody can just have a little look if you've not heard of her, because she is great. And then finally, on the quick fire, which hasn't been quick, but it's fine. It's my podcast. We can do whatever we like. The audience had just come to the end of their glasses. They're finishing off their popcorn. They know the event is going to come to an end. What have you been thinking about in the last couple of days?
What have I been thinking about? Really, the words that we use for the sales process. So the work that I do is generally with founders or business owners who are looking to improve the business results, which, it's productivity, it's revenue. And so I help them with revenue. How do we move more of these wonderful leads that they've generated when they've invested in events, when they've gone places and speaking on podcasts like this, when they're visible all over LinkedIn? And then they're so busy because they're generally, entrepreneurs don't have a lot of extra time and don't have all the extra hands they need. And so some of those leads just get lost, even though they were really good. And so I work with them for how do we do this? How do we automate some of this process so that they don't have to do all of it themselves, right? You have to contact everyone. How are you? How have you been? Call everybody. That becomes very difficult as the business
Mm,
starts to grow. So, but speaking about this process is a lost process in sales. And this is what's turned me on to what are these words we have for this process? And one of them is nurture. And this
mm,
nurture is you have a lead. Yes, they're great leads. They're interested. You've met them. This looks like someone who would be a good customer or client of yours. And then there's this process where they're not quite ready to buy. Maybe they're looking at some other things, or they're still learning that there's even a way to solve this horrible, terrible problem they have that they didn't know even existed. And they're moving closer to the point where they can buy something. And how do we stay in touch with them? How do we show them us so that we
mm,
can build this trust? How do we show them we talk about it, our voice, our perspective. And these are also very, very human things that we need to do to gain this trust. And yet we tend to not do it. And then we wonder, why is the business not growing the way we wanted it to, or why
mm.
is this so hard? And so thinking about this process nurture and even we have the marketing funnel and the sales pipeline and then nurture. And nurture generally for most people's pipelines means that's where leads go to die a slow death, right? There's nothing happening there. You just go,
Mm.
I can't believe that it took so I can't go back to them now. So building this and thinking about nurture has brought me to a lot of the different words that we use in marketing that are very, very aggressive.
Yeah.
And I find that so many words in business are actually built around strategy and warfare, because that's where a lot of our conversations about how do we compete, how do we
Mm.
win against the competitor, and things like targeting our perfect customer, target's a pretty aggressive
Right?
word. Yeah. So, and I've tried to take these out of some of these business metaphors without
Mm.
putting in things like, "Oh, we're going to circle the wagons and parallel path that," like those drive me nuts. Right. So speak in real terms and
Right?
yeah, just say what you mean. But I think we use the phrases that we've heard because those are the ones that are present. And
Mm.
now with all of these language models, the AIs are spitting this stuff back at us. And I keep saying, no, no analogies. ChatGPT, no analogies. Just say actual things, the actual things we're talking about. okay, hey, great to catch that. You sound like customer service.
Right. And I think this is so fascinating. And, by the way, we've disappeared. That's the end of the quickfire bit. And the audience have gone, given us a round of applause. Brilliant. And I think you're so right. And I think never has it been more important to be more aware and pertinent, or it's pertinent now to be really aware of language because of the role that AI is starting to play across the world. And it's a fascinating thing for me because actually the precision and the creativity that we as humans have and how we connect is fundamentally why humans are always going to do business with other humans, right? And I think it must be so fascinating because obviously, you've grown businesses and you've been around and you've coached lots of awesome founders and things like that. But where do you think your fascination with language began? Was that when you were a kid, or was that, or is this something's developed as you've developed in your career?
I think I always had an interest in it.
Okay.
And I also lived in France when I was 4.
Okay.
So, and it seems like, oh, you didn't remember anything. I certainly remembered not being able to understand what they were saying, and there were consequences. So these are things that as a kid you understand. And then I also took a long time to notice that I could actually understand the kids in my new school back in the United States. But I was in an area of the country where the accent was so different, and I was used to not paying attention. So, I have a lot of stuff going on in my head. I'm perfectly well entertained. And then suddenly it occurred to me, oh, actually, I understood that.
Mm.
So I think that's where it comes from. It's also from some of the understanding what's happening when I know both languages and some of the other people in the organization only know one or the other. And I can
Mm.
see the miscommunication playing out. Like, no, 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 no. That's not what they said.
Mm.
That's what you think they said. Like expensive and expansive. That was one that came up in an agency. I was like, no,
Right.
we didn't say it was an expensive collection. It was an expansive. Okay, expansive is off limits now in that context because it's too much opportunity to be misunderstood. And I think when we as communicators, when we speak, when we explain what we can do for others in our business, we have to think about who's our audience? Can they understand it? Have we used some fabulous wordplay that doesn't make sense to the person on the other
Mm.
side because they don't know the multiple meanings of that? Maybe they're not coming to the language with that native knowledge or even
Mm.
regional knowledge. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have words that come out of my family's vocabulary, and mine is different than someone who grew up in a different place in the United States or grew up. My kids notice they're missing nuances in both languages, German and English, although they speak without an accent. But
Right.
then they'll start laughing the minute they hear a German word that's kind of fun, but they've never heard before. And the rest of the room is wondering why are they
Yeah,
like,
and this is, and you're so right about that the sort of the nuance of it. And it was interesting. I was doing a talk last week to a room of CEOs, and one of the
yeah,
things that we ended up exploring was how business in particular spend lots of time and lots of money with very smart people working out what our values are. And those values generally are words that somebody believes other people are going to care about or understand.
yeah,
And I remember way back way in a, in a sort of, in a different business that I was running, I went and did a whole load of work on values and series of workshops and things like that. And we did this kind of, in essence, kind of quiz of like the most famous brands with their values underneath, but it was like a picture quiz. You had to move the brand to the values.
yeah,
And 90% of really smart people got all of them wrong because nobody knew what they all, so we think, and it's these things because we use these words that don't mean anything or they're not
yeah,
specific enough to that. Everyone can say we want to be inventive. Brilliant. What does that mean? Because what's inventive to a jewelry maker, to an
yeah.
engineer is complete, but it doesn't, and that's what I think is so
Innovative.
fascinating, right? Yeah.
Innovative. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Innovative. I love saying that with an English accent. That's another one where people say everyone says it, and we all think we're talking about the same thing, but maybe not.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and then to talk about, I try to ask people. I work a lot in this space of how do you move business through this pipeline. There's also
Mm.
an aspect of it where you have to tell people what you do, what and this is this packaging around services. How do you
Right.
actually explain what you do and make it tangible or understandable so that it has a weight and value that
Mm,
matches what you say when you ask for the amount of money to pay for it? And
mm,
it should be simple, but for a lot of people who have services, they go really, really wide because they know I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, right? Adaptable, really people who are able to solve problems like, I could do that, I could do that.
yeah.
No, explain what you do in simple terms. And that's hard for a lot of entrepreneurs until I ask, how do you deliver what you do? What does it look like? Like, what do you mean? What does it look like? It's a service.
Mm,
Okay. Do you have a kickoff? Do you talk to them once a week? Do you implement some sort of software for them? Do you have a meeting afterward? Do you deliver a report? So I try to talk with them about show me what the deliverables are and the
mm,
process to get to those deliverables. And once
mm.
that's clearer, then we can put a package around it like, oh, you do a sprint. Oh, you do a kind of coaching. Oh, you do a 90-day program. Oh, you have something that puts it in a space. And those words help the customer understand, is this for me or not? It's like dating, right? You want, well,
Right?
maybe let's hope it's
Mm,
better than dating, but
yeah.
you're trying, ideally, you're trying to find someone who values what you have to offer.
Mm,
And the better, the closer that matches, the less friction there is in that sale. They'll be like, please let me sign. Where do I sign? Please let me pay you.
right. I love that. I could talk to you about language and business for hours, and I am aware of my good listeners' time and also your own time. Uh, how can people find you? Where can they access your magnificence?
Oh, thank you. To find me, best place to find me is on LinkedIn. And
Mhm.
that's my name, Laura Fleming Schulte. And as far as I know, there's still only one of us. And that's
Perhaps not that
one.
surprising. Yeah.
No, it's one of the reasons I use my middle name. There are an awful lot of Laura Schultes, especially in Germany, and most of them are not me. So with the middle name, one more word, it makes it more specific. That's how you can
Choice
find
of
me.
language. So I will make sure that that is in the notes. I knew it was going to be awesome chatting to you. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on Clowning Around again with me, Stroud. Laura, it really has been a joy. Thank you so much.
Pleasure for me as well. Thank you.
Oh my word. Did you like Laura? Did you like her? She was cool, huh? Isn't it? I genuinely looked up at this little clock when you record this and suddenly looked up and went, oh my word, we're on like 39 minutes. There's so many things we could talk about. Language and business. Who knew that there are so many things you could talk about? I was like, how do you put a talk together? There's a language of that. How do you get it so that you engage and inspire people? There's a language in that. How do you make sure you don't sound like a business idiot? How do you engage with that? So there's all of these different pieces. And so much of what she was saying, especially towards the end about that entrepreneur, that you can say you can do everything, but you're never that clear for people that don't know you. And I think there's definitely a skill in identifying, how it is you deliver what it is that you do, and then having somebody else help you get really clear about that language. I know for me, and for those of you that follow me for quite a long time, I've had loads of different iterations of M Stroud. I've always been M Stroud, but actually not even that. I haven't even always been M Stroud. When I first started doing this, I was Emma Stroud, which seems like an old version of me. So yeah, the language matters. And again, if you are in business, just take a beat and just check. Oh, you sound like a human. Simple, right? So there you go, another episode of Clowning Around with me, Em Stroud. Have a splendid week. Do make sure that you laugh and you think with kindness and you play, because you know it's going to make you feel better. And I look forward to catching up with you very soon. Take care. Thanks for listening. Bye.